What if one song could remind the world what music truly means? What if a single trembling voice, from a boy no one knew, could awaken forgotten emotions, lost somewhere between fame and noise? That was the day when silence fell on one of the loudest stages in the world. The lights of America's Got Talent gleamed like 1,000 dreams, but none shone brighter than the soul of a young Filipino boy standing in their reflection. His name was Ely Santiago, a 17-year-old from the small coastal town of Batangas. Barefoot on a dirt road, his voice once echoed through narrow streets where music was more survival than art. Ely had grown up with the sound of the sea, waves crashing against hunger, wind whispering through empty nights. His father, Ramon Santiago, a fisherman who once played an old guitar under the stars, taught him that music wasn't about fame. It was about feeling, about healing hearts that the world had forgotten. But when a storm took his father away, Ely's song went silent too. For years, he sang only to the ocean, to the memory of a man who believed in him. Until one night, a local talent scout recorded Ely singing Anak by Freddie Aguilar under a flickering lamppost. That video reached millions. And suddenly, the boy from Batangas was invited to sing before the world. Now, on the AGT stage, Ely stood trembling. The microphone felt heavier than his dreams. Cameras pointed, judges watched, and behind their polished smiles, the world waited to see if this boy could truly move them. Could a boy from a small village in the Philippines revive the soul of music itself? Could one song, sung with pain, love, and memory, make the world remember what it had forgotten? That day, the answer would echo through every heart that still believed in the power of a simple, honest voice. Ely Santiago was not born into comfort. His world began in a weathered bamboo house by the shore, where the salty wind crept through every crack and the nights smelled of seaweed and survival. The sound of waves was his lullaby, and the creaking of his father's wooden boat was the rhythm of his childhood. He was a quiet boy, shy, observant, and full of unspoken emotions. People in his village often said Ely had a heart too soft for this hard world. He didn't talk much, but when he sang, it was as if the sea itself had found a voice. His melodies carried a calm ache, a kind of beauty that came only from pain. After his father's death, Ely's life became a series of long days and longer silences. He helped his mother sell dried fish in the market, carrying baskets heavier than his own body. School became distant, dreams became fragile. Yet every night, when everyone slept, he would sit by the ocean with his father's cracked guitar, the same one missing 2 strings, and hum softly to the stars. Music was his only friend, his escape, his memory. He didn't sing for fame, he sang to remember. He sang to feel less alone. Sometimes, stray dogs would sit beside him, as if they understood every note of his sorrow. Ely had small habits that revealed his gentle soul. He always collected seashells after storms, not because they were beautiful, but because they had survived something fierce. He believed people were like that too. Fragile, yet strong enough to keep their shape after being tossed by life's waves. Inside him lived a quiet storm, fear, hope, grief, and love all tangled together. He dreamed of standing on a real stage one day, not to impress anyone, but to prove that even a fisherman's son could make the world listen. Still, beneath those dreams hid a haunting doubt: was his voice really enough? Or would the world see just another poor boy trying to sing? That question lingered in Ely's heart, until fate placed a microphone in his trembling hands. Ely's life had always been a quiet battle, not with people, but with the silence inside him. After his father's death, that silence became heavier, almost unbearable. Music, once his comfort, began to feel like a wound he kept reopening every night. Each song reminded him of what he had lost: a father's laughter, a home filled with guitar strings and stories, a future that once felt certain. He tried to stay strong for his mother, Luz Santiago, a woman with hands hardened by years of labor and a heart worn thin by grief. She smiled for Ely, but her eyes always seemed to search for someone who wasn't coming back. Ely sang for her sometimes, hoping his voice could hide the hunger and sadness in their home. But deep down, he felt like his songs were whispers against the wind, small, fragile, easily forgotten. There were days when Ely wanted to stop singing altogether. The world felt too big, too cruel for a boy from Batangas. When he watched television, the artists on screen looked like they belonged to another universe, bright, perfect, untouchable. What could his cracked voice do in a world full of polished stars? Still, something inside him refused to die. His father's words, remembered through years of pain, echoed in his mind, "Sing not to be heard, but to heal." But how could he heal when he himself was still broken? Then came the moment that changed everything, the stormy night when he sang by the lamppost outside the marketplace. It wasn't a performance, it was a confession. His voice trembled, his eyes glistened with unspoken pain. He didn't know someone was recording him from across the street. That video, a simple boy singing his heart out in the rain, would soon spread across millions of screens, touching hearts far beyond his small town. But before the fame, before the stage lights and applause, there was only Ely, a lonely boy standing under the rain, singing not for the world, but for a father who was listening somewhere beyond the waves. That night, his pain became his purpose. Ely never expected that a single night beneath a flickering lamppost would change the course of his life. The morning after that rain-soaked performance, his small town was buzzing with whispers. Someone had uploaded his video, a grainy clip of a barefoot boy singing Anak with raw, trembling emotion. Within days, it spread like wildfire across social media. The world wasn't just hearing his voice, it was feeling it. From Manila to Los Angeles, people called him the soul of the Philippines. Journalists wrote about him, musicians praised him, and strangers cried watching him sing. But Ely didn't understand what was happening. He still woke up before dawn, helped his mother at the market, and came home to the same old cracked guitar. Yet somewhere in the noise of the internet, a message arrived, one that would shift his life forever. It was from the producers of America's Got Talent. They had seen his video. They wanted him to come. Ely couldn't believe it. The AGT stage, the place he'd only seen through old TV screens, was calling for him. But behind the excitement, fear crept in like a shadow. How could a boy who'd never left Batangas fly to America and sing before the world's toughest judges? He didn't even own proper clothes, let alone the confidence to stand on such a grand stage. When he told his mother, tears filled her eyes. She sold her gold earrings, the last keepsake of Ely's father, just to buy him a ticket. "Your father's dream lives in your voice," she whispered as she placed the small envelope in his trembling hands. On the flight to America, Ely watched the clouds drift below him and realized something he had never felt before: this wasn't just about singing anymore. This was about carrying his father's promise, his mother's sacrifice, and the heartbeat of an entire nation that believed in him. The boy who once sang to the sea was now about to sing to the world. And for the first time in years, his fear began to sound a little like hope. The days leading to his AGT audition were a storm inside Ely's heart. The bright lights of Los Angeles felt nothing like the soft glow of his village sunrise. Everything was louder, faster, and heavier. He felt invisible among towering buildings and confident faces. The other contestants spoke fluent English, carried designer clothes, and practiced with vocal coaches. Ely had none of that, just a worn guitar, a borrowed jacket, and a heart full of trembling faith. Backstage, the pressure grew unbearable. He could hear the roaring applause for other performers, the sound of dreams being made or broken within minutes. His hands shook. His voice felt trapped behind fear. For a moment, he wanted to run, to go back to the simple life where no one expected miracles from him. But then he remembered his mother's eyes, tired, but shining with pride, and his father's old words echoing through memory: "Sing not to impress, but to heal." That night, Ely closed his eyes and let those words steady his heart. He began to understand something profound: that music wasn't about perfection, it was about truth. His pain, his losses, his humble beginnings, they were not weaknesses. They were his strength. So he practiced alone in his small hotel room, over and over, not for applause but for peace. Each note became a confession, each breath a promise that he wouldn't give up now. He learned to let go of fear, to surrender to the song, to let his voice carry the weight of every storm he had survived. The more he sang, the more his tears became strength. The boy who once doubted himself was learning to believe, not in fame, but in purpose. By the time his name was called, Ely no longer felt like that trembling boy from Batangas. He felt like a vessel, of his father's dreams, his mother's prayers, and every struggling soul who had ever been told they weren't enough. He stepped onto that stage not as a contestant, but as a storyteller. And though the world didn't know it yet, a legend was about to be born. The stage lights dimmed. The audience fell into a breathless silence as Ely stepped forward, clutching his old guitar like a piece of his soul. In that vast room filled with cameras and strangers, he closed his eyes, and for a moment, it was just him and the sea again. The memory of his father's gentle humming drifted through his mind, guiding his trembling fingers across the strings. The first note echoed softly, pure and fragile, like a whisper carried by the wind. Then came the words, not polished, not perfect, but real. Each line of Anak trembled with the pain of loss and the beauty of love remembered. His voice cracked once, then rose higher, filling the air with something no microphone could capture, truth. The audience leaned in, hearts quiet, tears forming before they even knew why. Simon Cowell, known for his sharp composure, looked up, eyes softening as if he too remembered something long buried. It wasn't just a song anymore, it was a prayer. A call to every soul that had ever loved, lost, or hoped. When Ely finished, silence lingered, the kind of silence that holds reverence. And then, suddenly, the entire hall stood. The applause was thunderous, waves of emotion crashing one after another. Even the judges rose, their faces glistening with tears. The cameras zoomed in on Simon, who whispered words the world would replay 1,000 times. He just revived the soul of music. Ely's knees gave out as he bowed, overwhelmed. In that instant, he wasn't thinking of fame or fortune. He was thinking of his father's guitar, his mother's tears, and the boy who once sang to an empty shore. Backstage, he received a video call from his mother, her voice shaking with pride. Behind her, the neighbors gathered, cheering through an old TV screen. And though miles apart, Ely felt his father's presence in the warmth of that moment. For the first time, the boy who once sang to heal his pain had healed the world instead. And as the golden confetti fell around him, Ely realized, he hadn't just sung a song. He had found himself. When the lights faded and the cheers softened into echoes, Ely stood alone for a moment, eyes lifted toward the ceiling of the grand theater. Somewhere deep within that silence, he felt something he hadn't felt in years, peace. The boy who once sang to the sea had sung to the world, and the world had finally listened. But more than fame, what he carried home was something greater, belonging. In the days that followed, news outlets called him the new legend of the Philippines. Millions watched his performance on repeat. Yet Ely didn't see himself as a star. He still preferred quiet mornings, the smell of salt in the air, and the touch of his father's old guitar. Fame could fade, he knew that, but the feeling of being heard, truly heard, would stay forever. He realized that greatness doesn't come from where you are born, but from what you carry in your heart. Music had always been his bridge, between pain and healing, between the lost and the found. And now, that same voice that once trembled with fear had become a beacon for others who dared to dream beyond their scars. Ely returned to his village, not with riches, but with hope. He visited the same shore where his father used to sing. This time, when he strummed the guitar, it was not out of sorrow but gratitude. The waves moved gently, as if clapping for him. He understood, at last, what his father meant, sing not to be heard, but to heal. Because healing begins when you stop running from your pain and start transforming it into something beautiful. Ely's story became more than an audition. It became a reminder, that even in the smallest corners of the world, a single voice can awaken something the world has forgotten, the soul of music, the truth of emotion, and the courage to believe again. And as the sun dipped below the horizon that evening, his song lingered in the wind, soft, timeless, and alive, a promise that no dream is too small, and no heart too broken, to be heard by the world.